What's up, guys? Why am I still not getting any audio? What's up, Travis? I don't. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Are you getting any of this audio? Are you guys getting any of this audio? Because I am seeing no levels here. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. That's good. I'm seeing no levels on my screen. So that's why I'm freaking out here. But I guess we're okay. I guess we're good to go. Thank you, YouTube. Man, a lot of people in here saying they can hear me. All right. We're ready to roll. We're back. I got the camera working. I'm ready to go. I'm fired up, honestly, to talk to you because it feels like I haven't done as many lives lately. Everything's been a little crazy. So anyway, here we are. We're ready to go. There's a ton going on. There is a ton going on right now. If you guys watched the video that I posted on Friday, I believe it was, it had a lot of detail that came out at the end of the week about the Oklahoma and Texas negotiations and where things are at with that right now. And quite frankly, that story is fascinating. It is fascinating. It looks like Oklahoma and Texas are, in essence, a little bit stuck right now. But depending on who you ask, there are varying degrees of optimism as to whether or not a deal can be struck eventually to get Oklahoma and Texas actually out of the league a year or two early. We will see what happens. But I wanted to read a little bit more today from what we had from ESPN, which is where this first broke from Pete Thamel. And Pete Thamel was the one that had it shaded a little bit more negatively as far as the optimism was concerned. And then go over some of the key details from the SI story from Ross Dellinger, who really dug deep. Ross Dellinger is the one who got really down into the nitty gritty with the deep dive on this thing and what exactly is going on, how everybody feels in the league. It's become pretty clear, I think, that everybody on both sides just wants to move on and would prefer that Texas and Oklahoma get out a year early. But obviously the key there is going to be the financials. Like, can you financially satisfy the TV networks and everybody in the conference? But it is kind of amazing to me in this era of Big 12 unity that everybody seems to be quite unified in wanting Texas and Oklahoma just to move on, especially now that you have the 4 new schools coming. We've got the excitement of the new schedule that's out there. And that is another thing that I want to talk about today because have not had a chance to dive very deep into that. And I would love to hear your guys' thoughts throughout the show today about your squad schedule, how you feel about the new Big 12 schedule release and where all of that is headed. So we're gonna break down all of that here today and a lot of the details and a little bit of what I think Brett Yormark may be trying to do here. And he did comment to the Austin American-Statesman at the K-State basketball game on Saturday that he was at against Texas. He made a comment that left perhaps the door a little bit open for Texas and Oklahoma still. A fairly mundane comment, I think, honestly, and something you would expect Brett Yormark to say. He is not, in public situations like that, like coughed up a lot of details on negotiations or said anything too terribly controversial. So I didn't expect that, but it does provide a little bit more context to all of this. We have a Gonzaga update, and this actually came from Dennis Dodd. This was heading into Big 12 meetings that were happening last week, but the Gonzaga thing continues to seemingly be a real possibility for the Big 12. Now, our guy MHV4ER, whoever that guy is on Twitter, he's back out there, and he was trying to pitch that it was, Villanova. There were like 2 or 3 others from the Big East, Creighton maybe. Really spinning that idea with basketball back out there. I again tell you guys to exercise caution with that. I find the content that is provided by this gentleman or madam very entertaining. I don't know how much stock to actually put into it. But it does seem that Gonzaga is a legitimate option, and we have some details from Dennis Dodd on all of that. Again, I mentioned the Big 12 schedule release. Very curious to hear you guys' takeaways about that. We finally got it. Finally got it. Everybody can rejoice. Especially the newcomers. You're here, you're in the league. It's kind of been this, I won't say kumbaya moment. Probably should have been a kumbaya moment for the entire league over the last week to get the schedule and know that everybody is like ready to go and here and on board. But unfortunately, UCF Twitter kind of upset the apple cart on that. And we may need to talk about UCF a little bit here. I don't know how many UCF viewers we have in the house tonight, but you guys, you got to chill. You got to have a little bit of chill, at least just a teeny tiny bit of chill. I'm here for most of what you're trying to do, but you got to have a tiny bit of chill on all of that. Some Wilner mailbag updates, and I think that's basically where I'm at. We've got a lot of meat on the bone with what's been happening in the Big 12 here lately. I'm not even mentioning basketball here at this point and all of that. If you guys want to talk a little bit of Big 12 hoops, we certainly can do that as well. It's getting just insane. I mean, I feel like the update's the same every week. This league is a total freaking bear. Although now the storyline appears to be Texas separating from the pack just a little bit. They've got a massive opportunity on Monday inside Allen Fieldhouse, which should be a great game. It's a huge chance for Texas to take a total stranglehold on this league title race after they escaped from a 14-point deficit in Manhattan to win this weekend. But it is pretty wild. Anyway, exciting times in the Big 12. Happy for all the new coming schools that they have the new schedule and that they are going to play Texas and Oklahoma. But where I want to start is with some of the pettiness that is happening in light of all this. We'll get to the details. We'll get to the pettiness now that's happening from Texas and OU on this whole front also. Okay, if you guys are new here and you haven't been here, you don't know how this works, if you want to chime in on the show, you can donate by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. We've got 100 people here in the chat right now. I will not be able to see everything. So if you want to make sure that your voice is heard, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. We'll pin your chat up to the top for me to see over everybody else. Guarantees that it gets read here on the show. So it's a way to control the content, make your voice heard, and support the work that I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis here on the channel. And I couldn't do it without the support of all you guys. So I sincerely appreciate all of you guys who support the channel in that way. You can also support the channel by just simply liking the video. Just go click that like button. Totally free. One click. That helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment as well on the video, either after the fact or if you're watching it right now and you're not catching it live, make sure and comment as well. Tell me what you think. What do you think about your squad's schedule? Do you think I suck? Do you think I'm awesome? Either way, just let me know in the comments. All the feedback is greatly appreciated. And with that, we are off and running here on the show tonight. One last note, I suppose. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo, if you're not catching this live. Okay, so Pete Thamel was the first guy to burst onto the scene with this story last week about Texas and Oklahoma. And his story started like this. The lead is, after weeks of negotiations, Texas and Oklahoma are still slated to join the SEC in 2025. Sources said the parties couldn't come to terms in a complex negotiation involving the two schools, two networks, and the Big 12. Sources said the sides couldn't agree on how to create equitable value for what Fox would lose in 2024, the equivalent of 7 football games featuring an Oklahoma and Texas squads that command premium advertising. The timeline in play, the 2024 season, leaves some ambiguity and small potential for a Hail Mary revival, but the strong expectation remains that Oklahoma and Texas will play in the 14-team Big 12 in 23 and 24. Quote, "There's no formal timeline or brink from which you can't come back," an industry source said, "but this is where things are right now. A deal is unlikely." So that does leave the door open. That is not totally shutting it, but that is a different picture really than we got painted by Brett McMurphy and Ross Dellinger, another couple of college football reporters who put it much more as like, hey, negotiations have hit a snag here, but this is still a very fluid situation. That was really the language being used there. Thamel, a little bit more stern. And the interesting part about that to me is that, I mean, I really consider Thamel basically the foremost authority out there right now in terms of like college football reporters. And I mean, as such, like the guy's at ESPN for a reason. He also is somebody that I feel like has been strategically used by the Big 12 in the past. And when I say used, I don't mean like really used in the sense of like, okay, the Big 12 is using him in a negative tone. Like really, I don't mean that to be a negative connotation, I guess is the way that I should put that. I mean it to be like the Big 12 has used him strategically to leak messages out there about Gonzaga. That was a big one. Pac-12 has talked to Gonzaga. So is the Big 12. You only saw a big news cycle about it when it happened with the Big 12 because they got Thamel to report it. Also, the Big 12, Pac-12 conference call that was supposedly going to be about a merger between the two leagues, that wound up getting shut down. And the story came out from Pete Thamel that it was the Big 12 that shut down talks there. That infuriated George Kliavkoff to the point where he was still complaining about it until we got access to his emails, thanks to a request by a reporter, and we found out that actually was what really happened. But the Big 12 got the story out there, controlled the news cycle via Thamel. So I have to wonder here right off the bat if seeing the difference there in tone has something to do with the Big 12 trying to accomplish something with this, put some pressure on people, change the leverage of the situation, try to actually make this thing happen. I think that's something worth examining, what the motivation would be for that. Yormark's a deal maker. Yormark knows what he's doing. Yormark is a master at controlling, I won't say manipulating, but just like controlling the message. He's just a great marketer. And the report that I was getting from down on press row when he was in Manhattan, he stayed for the first half of the K-State Texas game, is that he was on his phone basically the entire time. So like the guy's wheeling and dealing. Either that or he was looking at my Twitter feed. I don't know. Maybe it was that too. I couldn't blame him if that were the case, but I'd imagine it's because the guy's out there trying to wheel and deal. So I wonder what the motivation there is with having Thamel paint it like that. Because a lot of these other details from the SI article make a ton of sense, and they're basically telling the same story. It's just the end result, like where things actually are, the optimism for something to happen is much different. So the Sports Illustrated article frames it like this. Despite a report Friday of negotiations stalling, many believe the situation remains fluid while acknowledging that recent snags and discussions have slowed momentum. Now we're going to start to get into some of the details here. And this is one of the things that really drives me insane. And this may cause me to just branch off on the tangent here about some of the pettiness that's happening. You can say between both sides, sure, there's been a lot of pettiness from the remaining 8 schools, which anybody in that situation would be pretty petty based on what transpired with Texas and Oklahoma. But we're seeing pettiness now from the Texas and OU side too. Again, I had it basically told to me like Texas and Oklahoma were, and this is no secret, they were just not thrilled at all about wanting to play these 4 new schools, and we're trying to vehemently argue that they should not have to actually play the 4 new schools, citing the fact that they didn't vote on the 4 new schools coming in. They abstained from that vote. They would have lost the vote anyway, and the only reason that the Big 12 had to go add new members is because Texas and Oklahoma left in the first place. So it's a ludicrous argument, which obviously didn't work out in the end because here they are on the schedule, Oklahoma playing 3 of the incoming teams this next year, and Texas playing 2 of them, including the vaunted road trip to Houston, which I am so stoked about. And that is my number one takeaway from the Big 12 schedule. I am thrilled that Houston is going to get the chance to host Texas in that game. But this is a quote from the Ross Dellinger article that jumps us off to all this. It, quote, "We didn't have a vote, and now we have to play them," asked one official. I mean, that is just infuriating, man. In life, you make decisions. Decisions have consequences. You want to go chase the paycheck? You want to go chase all the glory that comes with the SEC? Fulfill your contractual obligations that you signed a long time ago. Thus is life. Unless you are able to write a check big enough, make the deal enough for Fox, figure it out somehow. If you can't do that, yes, of course you have to go play those teams. Just because you fancy yourself as big bad Texas and Oklahoma that can't win the league over the last 2 years, and for Texas, about the last 55 years, even if you fancy yourself the big bad bullies on the block, there's still a contract. You still have to abide by the contract. And it is infuriating that that is the attitude of these schools. And it especially rings hollow when, again, the last 2 years, neither of those two have even played for a Big 12 football championship. In the sport that matters, they're not getting it done. They lost a combined 13 games this past year. So get the hell out of here with that. That is my reaction to that quote. And the other thing that is pretty maddening from this week, maybe maddening is the wrong word, I'll just say funny, to see how petty Texas and Oklahoma were about this. And it just confirms, I think, what I had really relayed to me, that Texas and Oklahoma were very sternly trying to fight having to play those 4 new schools upcoming here. They didn't even put out a schedule graphic or anything when the schedule drops. Like everybody across the league, and you'll look in the Big 12, you'll look in the SEC, Pac-12, whatever. Anybody who's dropping a schedule it's gonna come with a nice fancy press release. It's gonna come with a nice fancy graphic, maybe a video. Lots of teams did videos out there. Tons of media work to have fun with the schedule, play it up, get some engagement. And what did Texas and Oklahoma do? They just clicked one button. They just retweeted the Big 12 article and release. That was it. Not even anything in their own words, no graphic, no multimedia, no nothing, because they are being petty. That is a very petty move on the day that everything drops here. We know Texas and Oklahoma's social media teams, they could get this done if they wanted to. They surely have the resources. Big bad SEC brands have the resources to create a nice looking graphic or a video or whatever, but they don't, because they're pouting about having to play these games. And that makes me want the season to start tomorrow so that I can watch these games happen. Okay. I want to go watch Oklahoma have to go make a couple of road trips, which they are, to Cincy and BYU. I want to watch Texas go to Houston. I want to watch BYU go to Austin. I I want to watch all these games happening right now because I just need Texas and Oklahoma to start holding some more L's. They've held plenty here over the last couple of years. I would love for them to hold a few more, especially at the hands of the newbies this year. So there are plenty more details here from this SI article, but that is one thing I wanted to focus on here today. Like this is a part of why I do still think, like, if at all possible, I know Fox doesn't have the same motivations that the two sides here in the Big 12 have, but if at all possible, we got to get this thing done a year early. Cut the check, get all these schools the money. It'll help reimburse the 8 legacy schools in the Big 12 right now for the money that they're going to have to chip in to at least pay something to the 4 newcomers here for the next year before the TV deal starts. Like, get that done, get it accomplished. Just have everybody go their separate ways, because I'm generally somebody that's here for the pettiness, right? I typically am. Like, I'm not one, and I know there are a lot of you laughing, rolling your eyes, whatever. I am not one to avoid a petty shot here, especially in a situation like this with Texas and Oklahoma. But it is getting kind of old, and it is just like, you guys are just annoying. I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. You're trying to act like the big bad bullies on the block, but you're not winning anything right now. How many times can I say that? How many different ways can I say that? I just say it. I said it again to some Texas media type, some Texas Twitter type over the weekend, busting out Texas hasn't won a Big 12 title since the Obama administration, which is a fact, an unbelievable fact here at this point. How many times can I do that, before it just gets a little bit old? And I would imagine that a lot of people are kind of in that same boat right now. So I'm a little tired of it, a little sick of it. It sounds like for everybody's sake, it would be nice to move on. Even the SEC, it's a quote from the Dellinger article, the SEC had been under the impression, an official there, that it was going to happen in 2024. They were basically preparing for that. So everybody thought this was going to happen. And unfortunately, Fox seems to be the big holdup here. I'm not going to make any predictions on this thing, but I will say, if you have two sides that are motivated enough here and now seeing more pettiness spew out into the social media ether of the 2 official social media accounts of both schools, that's a lot of motivation that could make something happen. It just is probably going to take some creativity if we're actually going to get there. And boy, they are trying to be creative. They are trying to be very creative with what has been apparently on the trading block here. I'll get to more of that in just a moment. First, want to hop into some of your donations here and questions and comments that you guys have. Again, if you want to be a part of the show tonight, help control the content, get your question or comment onto the show, just click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you do that. Supports the work that I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content week in, week out, and make sure that you get involved on the show here tonight. So we start with Zach. Zach, I appreciate you, my man. Thank you for being here tonight. Zach references our guy, MHV3R. He says is back, predicting if the Big 12 gets the right 6 Pac-12 schools, that block adds $200 million, thus increasing the entire pie. Truth or speculation? I mean, look, I'm not trying to run this dude down. It's clearly very entertaining. I'm always going to pay attention to what he's posting out there, but speculation, seems much more speculative to me than anything. Any of the actual reporters that are involved here, the Brett McMurphys, the Pete Thamels, on the other side, like John Wilner from the Pac-12, you're not seeing any of that anywhere really from others. So that seems like big time speculation. Basically, there might be a little bit of truth to what is coming out there, but it feels like it always runs through a filter. And not that I don't do some of the same thing, but it runs through a very Big 12, very pro Big 12 filter. Right. But instead of me giving you like an opinion on something, that seems much more like presented as total fact. And I don't have anything that is going to verify that. I trust these guys that are like the legitimate verified reporters here that have a track record as opposed to somebody on Twitter. But I'm not hating on, look, MHV3R, go keep doing your thing, man. I'm not here to hate on it. I'm not here to try and tear anybody down. I would suggest that you follow him because if anything else, it's just wildly entertaining to read and think about. But I can't put any real stock into it. Basically, what he kind of laid out was like a best case scenario. It was like, hey, the Big 12's plotting and scheming to bring in Villanova as well as Gonzaga and like 4 big-time basketball schools if it doesn't work out to get the Pac-12 schools. But the Pac-12 schools are getting restless. I believe MHV3R also said that the valuation, the best the Pac-12 was going to do was the $250 million offer in the first place from ESPN, which is only $25 million per school, which obviously is fairly significantly less, $7 million less than what the Big 12 deal is per school. That all sounds great. That all sounds great, but almost too good to be true, right? And that is kind of where I sit on it. But it was a couple month break for MHV3R for even putting anything out there, so I'm welcoming it back. Because I read it and I'm like, hey, that's fun to think about. That is fun to think about. But yeah, I would just be careful. You can make your own determinations on how accurate or not accurate you think that it is. I would just caution you to be careful with it. That's the only thing that I would say. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Thank you for being here, my friend. Boom to the Sooner says, do you think OU would have tried to go to the SEC if Texas and the rivalry were not involved? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how any of that would really work. I think like if one of the schools got wind of the other trying to leave, the other would jump in, and the SEC is clearly not going to turn down Texas or Oklahoma coming to the conference. I believe that's what you're asking. Like, would one have gone without the other? I don't see a scenario where that would have really happened because I think it just is sensical. They're pretty tied at the hip with that, especially as it relates to their place in the Big 12, because I rant and rave all the time, rightfully so, about what's actually happening out there on the field. But it is clear that they are the two biggest brands in the conference. It is clear that they have this connection with the rivalry. It is clear that they are the ones that have had their eyes on bigger and better things for a long time. I don't think there was any way that was going to happen one without the other. So I think you were always going to be in that boat. I mean, even back to the last major conference realignment round back in 2010, 2011, there was all that talk about the Pac-12, and that of course was including Texas and Oklahoma and others from the Big 12, but Texas and Oklahoma were tied at the hip once again in that discussion. So I don't think you were going to get away from Texas on your own under any circumstance there. Alpha Cat, what's up, Alpha Cat? Alpha Cat says, if OU and Texas are stuck for 2 years, will the Big 12 schedule be the same for both years with home and homes? That's a great question. I do not know. I do not know the answer to that. That's a really good question. Did they put this schedule out thinking like, all right, you can just flip-flop it for the next year and make it work? I don't know. I really don't know that. The only thing one thing somebody told me, again, I probably shouldn't even be saying this stuff because the last thing I told you guys was like, hey, I think there's a chance that Texas and Oklahoma won't be playing any of the new schools when the schedule comes out. And that obviously, thankfully, turned out to not be totally accurate. But from K-State's standpoint, they're not getting Oklahoma on this schedule, which sucks. That's been an automatic W for K-State essentially here over the last 5 years. So I wanted to see that. And I was kind of led to believe that that's probably not going to happen, even if Oklahoma sticks around for the last year of the whole thing in 2024, that would probably not be a game that gets on the schedule. So that might lead me to think, all right, maybe it is that you just flip-flop it there. But no, I think that's a really good question, Alpha Cat. I don't have the answer for you. Wish that I did, but I think your head is in the right place and like thinking about what this is going to look like moving forward. And people would definitely be curious to know that. James, what's up, James? James, thank you for being here. Thank you for the thumbs up from the Fox little gift there saying good job. Thank you, my friend. At least it looks like a Fox to me. I don't know. Maybe there's a veiled message in there about Fox, the TV entity, being the one that seemingly is the roadblock right now for Texas and Oklahoma cutting the deal to get out a year early. I'm not seeing any question or comment there attached to that, James, but I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for supporting the channel. Boom to the Sooner. Boom to the Sooner checking it again. Thank you, my friend. Boom to the Sooner said, could OU and or Texas get a loan and pay out whatever the magic number is to get out of the Big 12? I'm kind of out over my skis on that. I know there was some talk and speculation at some point about like, could the SEC help them? Could the SEC front some of the money that would then be like withheld, or I don't know, figure out some way to do that on the back end. I really I don't know how much of it is necessarily about a check at this point, unless you're just going to say like, hey, could you write a check big enough to just give Fox this money and say, hey, here's what the 7 games that you're missing out on would be worth. Take this money and run. That'll cover you for the 7 games. But I would just imagine that would be a very large number. And the figure that was already thrown out by Ross Dellinger in Sports Illustrated was anywhere from $70 to $130 million being the total price tag for both Texas and Oklahoma. Each school having to write that kind of a check to get out a year early, which is, I mean, that's a ton of money. That is a ton of money. And if we're talking about on top of that, enough to make Fox good for those 7 games, that's a whole other thing, because the 70 to 130 is just about kicking it to the Big 12 and figuring that out for the Big 12 schools here. But Fox and the TV network is the other piece of this pie. So I don't know. I really don't know. You guys are asking good questions. I think that's a question that has been reasonable to ask for a long time. I think Texas probably has a way to make this happen themselves much easier than Oklahoma does. I think the financial situation for Oklahoma is a lot different than it is for Texas. But you do start to wonder, with all the money that's involved in Texas's program that they certainly love to flaunt and base their entire reputation upon, could you not do something there to figure it out? Could you not just have some giant mega rich booster or a gaggle of them get together and just make this happen? You would kind of think so. But it does not appear to be happening. So good questions tonight, guys. Really good questions tonight. This just hopped ahead on me. Sorry, Michael. Michael, thank you for being here, and I appreciate your support, my friend. Michael says, BYU fan, love the schedule. Funny Texas and Oklahoma have to play us after keeping us out for years, and Texas leaves with a losing record against BYU. See you in November. But hey, look at Michael. Michael says, boom to the Sooner pregame dinner on me. Look at that. We got camaraderie within the community here. All right. Texas and Oklahoma might be a little bit petty on social media right now, but within the Big 12 community on John Kurtz's YouTube channel, no pettiness at all. We've got all the branches being extended there. And you're right, Michael. I had that schedule pulled up here. Let me get that. BYU will host Oklahoma on, that's the end of the year, November 18th. November 18th for Oklahoma traveling to BYU. The Sooners also have to go to Cincinnati, which is going to be on September 23rd. So that's a pretty fun one coming up early in the schedule. Yeah, BYU. I mean, I loved the graphic that BYU put out. I love the excitement that I could sense on Twitter from BYU fans. Love you guys. Thank you for embracing it, and very happy for you. Very, very happy for you. High Noon Hypnotoad. Man, High Noon Hypnotoad. I don't know that I've seen High Noon Hypnotoad. You may have been in here in the chat before, but I haven't seen your name pop up here. I love it. Love that. High Noon Hypnotoad says, and thank you for the support, by the way, says, hey, John, love the show. Heard that Arizona State seems to be the most likely to leave the pack. You think they jump ship or stay with the pack? Personally, I think they stay together. Yeah, I'm still a lean to, like, right now, them staying together. But I will continue to beat the drum that John Wilner, Pac-12 reporter, as keyed in as anybody in the Pac-12, has said, and he said it again. I was reading through some of his latest work from this week earlier tonight. He continues to repeat mid-March. I now saw it changed to mid-March. I think before it was just he was saying, like, March in general. He timestamped it as mid-March. If the Pac-12 does not have a media deal by mid-March, that he will start to become much less optimistic about the Pac-12 staying together. So that's a little over a month away, 5 or 6 weeks. Basically, it's like if the Pac-12 gets a TV deal done in the next 5 or 6 weeks, they're probably going to be all right. And that obviously would include a grant of rights for Oregon and Washington. If not, then you can kind of really open up that speculation to maybe they do wind up joining the Big 12. Maybe that league does dissolve. Maybe there are still going to be problems there. But yeah, I think with the Kevin Warren threat gone, with him leaving the Big 10, there's less of an option for Oregon and Washington at this point. They still have, now with college football playoff expansion, a pretty clear path to the playoff within the Pac-12. There are some dynamics that have changed here that I think have made it even a little bit more likely that everything stays together. I might do a video on it this week, but the Arizona athletic director did an interview this week as well, where he gave some details on what was happening, and it did not sound like, gave some details from the Pac-12 meetings this past week, and did not sound like a guy that was on the verge of leaving. And that's where I get to your question, High Noon Hypnotoad. I would actually say, Arizona to me has always been the one that seemed the most likely to leave. And if you guys have been here on the channel for a while, you've heard me lay this out before, but I think a piece of that is basketball. Because the Pac-12 going to Amazon, if that's really what it's going to be, Amazon or Apple, one of the major streaming networks, to take on the largest chunk of inventory for them, if that's the case, that probably pushes a lot of basketball to streaming, loses you exposure in the basketball world. Arizona already has seemed like the most wandering eye sort of school out of the Pac-12. Now, if they're looking at, like, hey, we're the ones that care the most about basketball, you're going to kill our basketball exposure with this deal. We can make similar money in the Big 12, be in the best basketball league, have a great landing spot for our basketball, plus some extra stability with how unified the Big 12 is right now. I think they would be the most likely to leave first here. But again, even as of right now, it does not seem like their athletic director, at least publicly, is projecting anything of that sort. So I've always thought that it was like Arizona State also, their athletic director and kind of administration has been, at least going back a couple of months, fairly vocal about being supportive of the Pac-12. So I'm not sure how I've had them third. I've had them ranked third, long story short, in terms of likeliness to jump in the four corner schools. To me, it's always been Arizona 1, Colorado 2, Arizona State 3, Utah 4. Shout out to the athletic director who quote tweeted me to reaffirm that they are not planning on leaving anytime soon. And the way that they are running that conference in football, I don't blame them. I don't blame them. But thank you for being here. High noon, hip to toe. Appreciate the question. That is where I'm at on that front. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Checking it again. Boom to the Sooner says OU doesn't play K-State this year. I get 2 away games, 1 at Tulsa, 1 in Stillwater, both 50-minute drives. I don't see any problem here. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough, Boom to the Sooner. I made that joke on Twitter that Oklahoma fans, I'm sure, were reacting like Ricky Bobby, like, thank you, sweet baby Jesus. That K-State does not appear on the schedule after losing 3 of the last 4 to the Cats. I'm sure that brought some smiles to your face, Boom to the Sooner. You didn't even have to. I saw the celebration in Oklahoma circles when Deuce Vaughn announced that he was going to the draft as opposed to coming back. That doesn't even matter anymore, right? You don't even have to play Treshaun Ward, who I think is going to be an amazing running back this year for K-State, who tore Oklahoma up in the bowl game for Florida State transfer. And yeah, for you, look, the proximity to the drives and going to play those games, that is awesome. And you should definitely go to Bedlam. I mean, Boom to the Sooner, you should go to Bedlam for sure, because it still could be, on the topic of the chat tonight, still could be the last Bedlam coming up this year. Definitely go to that game. Please go to that game. Side note, a bummer of the Big 12 schedule that we got released is that we will not get an Oklahoma State-Texas game. That's been a series that I think has been wildly enjoyable, and I was not pleased to see that is not going to be a game on the schedule. That's turned into a really fun rivalry here. So casualties, that may be a reality here of seeing this new Big 12 schedule is realizing, like, setting some of the casualties of the schedule and realignment and Texas and Oklahoma leaving setting in. That was one where I was like, God, that's been a great game, a wildly entertaining game to watch. Texas and Oklahoma State typically every single year. We don't get it, but enjoy the drives, go to the games. Highly encourage that. Live it up. I know, Boom to the Sooner, for you guys, greener pastures you feel like that you're headed towards in the SEC, but soak everything up here in the Big 12 while you still can. And don't forget about us little folk when you head out the door. Calico Willie, what's up, Calico Willie? Appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here. Calico Willie says, hi, John. Good Sunday to you. Can we talk about the poor refs in basketball right now? I'm not as down as I should be because our Tang gang is still up. Yeah, it's not good. I am not like complaining about the officiating guy. There have been some calls that, I mean, probably the one that bothered me the most last week, it wasn't going to change the outcome of the game, but it was the K-State game in Lawrence. Cam Carter had a drive that could have he banked it in, got called for a charge. It was a pretty bad call in Allen. Would have made it a 7-point game with maybe, 7 or 8 minutes left in the second half. I don't think K-State was winning at all. They just didn't have it. Kansas was too good on Tuesday night to win the game, but that was a really frustrating call. On Saturday against Texas, it felt like they were just rewarding anybody who flopped. And for the most part, Texas, I thought, just took more advantage of that. They were flopping more and getting more of those calls, but K-State started to do it some too and got a call or two because of it. So, yeah, and I've seen, my buddy Cole, who does a 3-mod pod with me, has pointed out like how old some of these officials are, and they're not quite able to keep up like physically with things and being out of position. I see all the complaints. I'm not saying it's good, but I guess I just kind of view it like, if it's not going to be great across the board, everybody's having to deal with the same thing. So just persevere and overcome, go win the game. I don't like getting sucked into like the loser's ballad with the officiating, because that's frankly what it is. I mean, look at Cincinnati Bengal fans. Bearcats in here, I love you, but I mean, it's been 2 straight weeks. I guess a little over a week. What, like 8 days, 7-8 days now, just straight up complaining about the officiating in the AFC Championship game, and it's never going to be a good look. So I'm not going to complain too terribly much about it, because that's not really my thing. I don't really like doing it, but I'm not saying that it's a great deal here at the moment. And I think like block charge is one of those, that block charge, the flop, it's one of those things that's just subjective and feels pretty all over the place. And you never quite know exactly what it is that you're going to get. So I won't profess to you that it's in a great spot, but I'm also not going to, I will say waste. You use a bunch of time, really, really, truly complaining about it. And as far as K-State goes, Calico, yeah, it was disappointing. I mean, Saturday was the most frustrating loss of the season, however you want to frame it, to me by far. You had a 14-point lead, just a raucous home crowd, and to get out hustle. I mean, really they just got whipped in the second half by Texas, who came out with their hair on fire. I mean, Texas came out, much better effort, beating K-State to loose balls, just so much more energy. I got to give credit to Roddy Terry. Their bench was super into it. Everybody in the second half. And I may have been getting annoyed with that some, and he was just begging for a tee for a lot of that. I mean, they brought the energy, and K-State did not. And to have that happen in front of a just jazzed up home crowd with Jacob pulling back and blowing a 14-point lead, and Marquise Noel playing probably his worst game of the season. I mean, it was just very frustrating, very, very frustrating. But you have to understand, like Iowa State, Baylor, Kansas have all lost 3 straight or 3 of 4 in this league at one point. So K-State's lost 3 straight Big 12 games. Got to find a way to get back at it on Tuesday against the kind of banged up TCU squad. So, yeah, I'm not going to get too terribly down. They may not win the conference. It's going to be just a bear for anybody to do this year. But if we're really sitting here saying, like, wow, what a disappointment, K-State's not going to win the conference when they were picked last this year, I mean, I'm still wildly, wildly happy with what's happening with the basketball program right now. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Thank you for being here, Daniel. Appreciate your support as always, my friend. Daniel says, looking forward to seeing the new Big 12 schools. Next year, it's looking like my daughter and I will be seeing the Cats play Houston. Okay, I like it. OU is too chicken to play the Cats. Go Cats and go Chiefs. Love that, Daniel. K-State and Houston. Was going to go get the date on that one for you. K-State and Houston is the 28th. October 28th for K-State and Houston in Manhattan. K-State is hosting Houston and UCF. That's right. Excuse me. No road trips. No road trips to the new schools for the Cats. A little disappointed. I wanted that BYU road trip. Still looking forward to that hopefully happening here at some point, but I may have to wait a couple of years for that. I don't know that Oklahoma – I think the problem here, Daniel, is that the Big 12 was trying to stick Oklahoma with too many of the newbies. They give them 3 of the newbies, and then K-State gets off the schedule. So in the process of kind of giving the middle finger to Oklahoma a little bit there, like, hey, go play all these new schools when you guys didn't want to do it at all, comes at the expense of them having to take their annual L to K-State. So unfortunately, not going to work out, Daniel. Not going to work out. But hopefully that Houston game will be pretty fun. Daniel Holgerson had some very interesting comments that I may do my own video on coming up this week as well, where he was really threatening kind of the whole atmosphere around Houston. Like, guys, we got to get better with the support, the facilities, everything it is that we're doing right now, because you're all celebrating the schedule, but I know what this entails and what I'm going to have to do to go win games, like playing at K-State and games like that on a regular basis. Very interesting take to have on the day that the schedule all came out, when people are kind of championing it and celebrating it, from Dana Holgerson. So anyway, looking forward to that, Daniel. Hope you have a great time at the Houston game. And hey, go Cats and go Chiefs. I can certainly support go Chiefs. The Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl. I would like to just inform everybody here. I have zero doubt in my mind. Zero doubt. Let me just go ahead and put that out there. Very little doubt. Very, very little doubt. I'll downgrade. Very little doubt that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. When it comes down to it, man, and I know a couple of Big 12 legends, Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, it's Patrick Mahomes against Jalen Hurts. I don't care if it's like kind of a bum leg. It's Patrick Mahomes against Jalen Hurts. Chiefs are going to be all right. They will win the Super Bowl. Julius, what's up, Julius? Appreciate you being here. Thank you for your generous support, as always. Truly, truly do appreciate it. Julius says, howdy, John. I just wanted to show some support. Well, thank you once again for that. All you guys that support the channel, I cannot thank you enough. I try to tell you all the time and be extremely, genuinely grateful, which I am. So thank you, Julius. I was disappointed K-State wasn't on BYU's schedule. Me too. Me too. I got tipped off by someone like a day before on the BYU side that was like, "Hey, I think K-State's coming to Provo." So my hopes were up. My hopes were up, and I was ready to start planning that trip. I want to see what the Big 12 baseball schedule will look like, because I've seen that view so many times, like the picture from home plate at BYU's baseball stadium, and I'm like, man, if K-State baseball goes to play there, I'm pretty heavily invested in the K-State baseball after doing play-by-play there for the better part of a decade. So I love me some K-State baseball. That would be a fun trip that I might have to make too. Julia says, I was kind of looking for at least 1 week to not cheer on your Wildcats to be able to throw some shade. There's always next year, I guess. Hey, that is the fun part of it. You know, new rivalries, throwing a little bit of shade. That would have been fun. Although, Julius, my take on BYU has been like the reputation is that there's not a whole lot of shade and that everybody's nice and they hand out ice cream to the visitor section at the games. It just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of that, but I'm here for it. You guys know, I mean, if you see me on the channel, you see me on Twitter, you know, I'm not afraid to go back and forth a little bit. So I look forward to the day when we can, Julius, and I look forward to the day where you know, I can break bread with some of the BYU fans that have so graciously supported this channel here when we actually have a game where our schools will go play. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen, though, at some point. We know that is going to happen. The other thing is we can get like the Big 12 basketball tournament still in Kansas City for a little while. That was one of the things MHV3R was speculating about, is moving it again to Madison Square Garden, which does seem like something Yormark would want to do. Let's just hope and pray that it can stay in Kansas City for a decent amount of time. But if BYU is coming to play in the Big 12 basketball tournament, just a couple blocks away from where I live, so that would be another option there. But anyway, Julius, appreciate you. Hope you're excited for BYU schedule, even if it doesn't include my Cats. And I cheers. I'll just say cheers to the 2023 Big 12 schedule. Calico Willie, what's up, Calico? Calico, following up on his comments about Big 12 officiating, says not complaining, just want some consistency. And that is totally fair. And probably something that's just really unattainable in the end. It's just difficult. And I don't know what the solution really is. I don't know that we're ever going to see a solution that's satisfactory for people. There's too much subjectiveness in officiating in general that I don't see us ever getting to a point where people are like genuinely, truly happy with it. But hey, we can still, I understand how that's still going to be frustrating, and there's still going to be complaints en route to maybe trying to figure out some solution. I don't know. But one thing I will say, Calico, there are some things, like you look at the schedules of these guys, and I'm not typically one to dive this deep into what officials are doing, but I've got friends that care a lot more about it than I do and will look into it. Like, these guys are doing a ton of games a week and going, you know, wild travel schedules from one night to the next. And it just seems like an awful lot is on their plate. So maybe if we had more and it was a little more spread out and guys could stick to one conference as opposed to bouncing all over the place, maybe something like that really would help. So there probably are some like little tweaks that could help some things. Calico says, honestly, the Cats are still overachieving from what we thought to begin the year. Love the direction for us. No doubt. And they've got a top 20 recruiting class coming in 2023. The high school talent that's coming in next year, it's going to be really good. I just, if they have a couple of spots, it's going to depend on what happens with the roster right now. But if they have a couple of spots to fill in the portal going into next year, love their chances of doing something significant there, based on the fact that they already got Keontae Johnson in this past year with nothing to sell. Now they're going to have legitimate winning to sell. Yeah, sky's the limit, man. Sky is the limit. Zach, I see Zach checking in here. What's up, Zach? Zach, thank you for being here, man. Zach says, go Cincy, loving our 23 football schedule. We can bowl. Let's go look at the Cincy football schedule here, Zach. Cincy is going to play Oklahoma at home. They've got a Friday night game with BYU, which is something that I should point out about the schedule here. Couple of Friday night games that are non-Black Friday. Like, we've had the Black Friday games for a while, and there are 2 of those, it looks like. 2 or 3 of those. But outside of that, you have 2 games, including one of which is K-State. That is K-State, Oklahoma State on Friday, October 6th against Oklahoma State. And then you also have BYU and Cincinnati on September 29th, which is a Friday night game. And that is something that has been speculated about for a while with the schedule, is that you are going to wind up with some Friday night games, just trying to maximize exposure, maximize money that you can milk out of the TV contract. probably something that you're going to have to get a little bit more used to. And admittedly, like I'm not totally crazy about that. I love the college football Saturday. I guess from my standpoint, it's like you get your game out of the way on Friday. You can just sit back and relax a little bit more on the Saturday and enjoy it. That's the spin I'm trying to give to myself on that. But it does take away like some of the tradition of a nice full Saturday where you can go chill, and a Friday night, you might have to take off work if you're going to go to the game, all these different things that come into play. But it's just a part of the new reality. Just a part of the new reality that you're going to have to deal with now, because I don't think that is going anywhere anytime soon. Back to Cincy. They've got home game against Oklahoma at BYU on a Friday. They have a bye, so pretty early bye week there. And then you've got 7 straight conference games. Iowa State and Baylor at home, at Oklahoma State, UCF at home, at Houston, at West Virginia, Kansas at home for Cincinnati on the schedule there. So the home game with Oklahoma, I think that Cincinnati fans have to be pretty stoked about that. The fact that you are getting the Sooners and you're getting them coming into Nippert, that's going to be pretty exciting for Cincy. So, yeah, Zach, happy for you guys, and happy that we finally get to see it and talk about legitimate games that are going to happen in 2023. Oh, I love it. I love it. This isn't even a donation, but Donald, my man Donald, you are making my nights. Right as I'm saying, complaining about the officials is the ballot of the loser. We have Donald in here saying your KSU Big 12 football championship in 2022 would not have happened if Big 12 refs had not called 14 penalties on Texas for 119 yards versus 1 penalty and 0 yards for Oklahoma State. Donnie, my man, take heed. Listen to my words. Complaining about the officials is the ballot of the loser. Texas has infinitely more money and resources than anybody else in the conference. Shouldn't Texas be good enough than lowly Oklahoma State, who ended the year with all kinds of drama and locker room issues and 6 or 7 losses? I even forget at this point for Oklahoma State by the end of the year. All that going on, and you guys couldn't muster up Bijan Robinson. He's like a cheat code in college football this year. You couldn't still muster up a win despite whatever the officials were doing there. I guess you just have to, Donald, we'll just have to throw it up with, there's been all this discussion about the NFL being scripted. We'll just have to throw it up to college football. Brett Yormark, once he came in, must have been so damn good that he was able to orchestrate in football and basketball for Texas and Oklahoma, the officials to come down on them and force them to lose games throughout the year. We should, frankly, be giving Brett Yormark more credit for that. So I'm glad, Donald, you brought that to my attention and reminded me about that, because Yormark, that is the best thing that he has done, is clearly fully orchestrate this scripted attack on Texas and Oklahoma in football and basketball through the officiating, as has been made clear by many a Texas and Oklahoma fan on Twitter. So you're right, Donald. That is the only reason Texas clearly was winning the league, if not for Brett Yormark. It's like would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids. If it wasn't for you meddling Brett Yormark, Texas would have won the Big 12. Thank you, Donald, for bringing that to everybody's attention here in the chat. And I hope everybody could give Donald a nice little round of applause for being that guy to complain about Texas not winning the Big 12 championship simply because of officiating. Big bad Texas resources were not enough to overcome the Zebras. Guess Texas just needs a little bit more money and exposure. And I'm sure, Donald, that once you get into the SEC, Texas will get the absolute love and adulation that they deserve. I'm sure in the SEC, they have been clamoring and just waiting for Texas to come save the conference, and they will get preferential treatment because Texas will be the biggest, baddest brand in the SEC and better than Georgia, Alabama, any of that. They don't need that. They've got Texas now coming in to save the day. So there will be plenty of preferential treatment for the Longhorns once the day arrives that they actually do get to the SEC. So, Donald, you just have to count down the days until you get to the SEC, and you will be handed everything there because you are Texas, and it is your birthright. It is your birthright, in fact, to go do that in the SEC. And I'm sure that Greg Sankey is going to help you out once you get there. So my apologies. If you would like a K-State Big 12 Champions t-shirt, if you want to take a Sharpie and, put a horns up thing on it or whatever you want to do, you can do that. You can cross out the K-State, write Texas, whatever it is you want to do. I've got some extras. I bought a bunch of Big 12 championship gear here. So if you drop your mailing address into the chat, Donald, I will send you a couple t-shirts of K-State's Big 12 championship. Or if you hit me up on Twitter, I'll be sure to send you the picture of Deuce Vaughn smoking a cigar in the locker room with a Dr. Pepper right next to him. I could give you the Will Howard version. I could give you the Felix Anudike-Uzomah version. Remember, he won Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year over your linebacker that I don't even remember what the hell his name was, that everybody was complaining about after the fact because, he was so impactful. I don't even remember his name. Any of those options would work, Donald. So you just let me know. You just let me know, and I will make that happen for you because you guys were so terribly insulted by the officiating this year. So anyway, glad we could get to that. Glad we could get to that. Boom to the Sooner. Boom to the Sooner says, what will next year's basketball schedules look like with the 4 extra teams? No idea, and that is another wonderful question because that will be dicey. Right now in basketball, you have such a perfect setup with like everybody doing the home and home. I mean, it's brutal for everybody in the league to have to go through and do it. But if you're talking about like determining a champion and all that stuff, it's a pretty good setup. And that I think will get convoluted with the 4 new schools. And also is going to be, you talk about like people in the football scheduling realm worrying about who's on the schedule and who's kind of dodging who has the easiest schedule. I've seen everybody trying to rank who's got the easiest schedule out of anybody in the Big 12. Think about that in basketball, because I guess really if you say like there's no easy path, okay, fair enough. But like, I don't know, if you're somebody that could dodge like an extra game against Houston and Kansas, that would be a massive advantage in the schedule. You're just going to run into probably a lot of inequities there based on the nature of the beast. I also saw a UCF fan at one point on Twitter this weekend being like, dude, Big 12 basketball is going to be rough for us. So I guess that'd be the other thing. You hope that you get UCF a couple of times when they come into the league. But yeah, that will be a tricky exercise. I mean, the football schedule already seems really difficult. Basketball, having to throw in extra games there, I think will also be really, really tough. So anyway, yeah, good question. You guys are asking a lot of good questions. I wish I had better answers for you. I wish I had better answers for you. Thank you for all the support, guys, on that Donald rant there. I felt pretty good about that. Gone to Tex. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for the support. Gone to Tex says 2024 ESPN gains Texas, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M. Would they pay? I'm not entirely sure what the question is there. Like, would they pay to help? You're saying, would ESPN pay to help get them out a year earlier to get those games? Well, the problem is here, like, and this was outlined in Ross Dellinger's article. I didn't get to all the details from that. If you guys want every specific detail on that, check out the video that I posted on Friday. But a part of that was the kind of rivalry that Fox and ESPN have with each other. And it's not just who gets what games. It's also who would be perceived to be the winner and loser in this. And nobody wants to take what would be like a public loss. And so if ESPN were going to pay Fox money to make that happen, I would guess that ESPN would view that in some ways as like a public loss, and neither one want to take that, especially after ESPN got squeezed out of the Big Ten deal. And so in some ways that feels like a public loss for them that they're not going to be a part of that entity, and has further, I think, kind of like pushed them pitted against each other with the SEC versus the Big Ten. So I don't think that is going to be a thing. Long story short, but I do appreciate the question. All right. This is like the 5-ish minute warning here. If you guys have anything that you want to get covered that has not been on here yet, you can click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to drop in your question or comment. Make sure that it gets on the chat. It'll supersede everything else that's going on in the chat, and is a way to support the work that I'm doing here, bringing you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis. Also, if you could like the video, I would appreciate that. Like the video, 1 click, totally free, really helps me out. Comment on the video if you're catching this after the fact. That really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm as well. And you can support me on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4 there. What have we not gotten to? We didn't get to Gonzaga. I think I'm going to do that instead of the rest of the Big 12 schedule details, because again, I will just point you to the video on Friday where I just outlined everything that Ross Dellinger had about the Texas Oklahoma situation right now. But on Gonzaga, this was going into the Big 12 meetings on Thursday. Dennis Dodd wrote this. He quotes someone familiar with media rights deals, says, quote, "I would assume if the Big 12 wanted Gonzaga, they'd have Gonzaga." Dodd writes, maybe. On the school's end, the decision is said to be largely up to Coach Mark Few, who has guided the Zags since 1999. The program is currently in the middle of a rights deal with ESPN and CBS that expires in 2026-27. On the Big 12 end, Yormark has tried to sell his ADs on the concept of a basketball-only member. They've previously seen a presentation regarding Gonzaga's membership, but it didn't include any financial details. Don't be surprised if the ADs have sought to price Gonzaga's inclusion with league media consultant Endeavor. In return for bringing its brand, Gonzaga would get security and access to the NCAA tournament revenue that surpassed $32 million in 2020. The West Coast Conference and Gonzaga have remained tight-lipped about what the league and program are currently making in media rights revenue. Quote, any money they get from the Big 12 has to be more than they're making, one industry insider said. Biggest hang-up may be what to do with Gonzaga's minor sports. It's unlikely the West Coast Conference would allow them to remain in the league with basketball not included. Joining the Big 12, if even a possibility, would create significant travel expenses with teams stationed everywhere from Florida to West Virginia to West Texas. That does seem like a legitimate hang-up, right? Because if I'm the West Coast Conference, there's no way that I'm letting Gonzaga keep the other sports in the league if they're leaving. If you're taking your basketball brand, see ya. We're not going to help you. That feels like at that point, it would just be like a favor that you'd be doing to Gonzaga. And it's the same sort of deal like with Oklahoma and Texas. Like the Big 12 certainly is not going to feel like they need to do any favors for Oklahoma and Texas when they're leaving. If Gonzaga is going to take their ball and leave in basketball, you're not going to want to do that. And that, I would assume, on a Gonzaga budget, that's going to be really tricky, figuring out what you're going to do with the travel schedule for the minor sports if you're going to be in the Big 12 too. So that sort of feels to me like in the same realm, same vein as the Oklahoma and Texas exit, trying to get out a year early. Like, I can still see it happening, but it does feel like that's a pretty significant roadblock, much like the TV issue with Fox and the money with Fox. It's a pretty significant roadblock right now to get Texas and Oklahoma out of the conference early. So I'm still a little more optimistic about the Gonzaga edition than some folks would be. I still saw on Twitter this weekend when I was kind of making the rounds, the Dennis Dodd blurb, people saying like, it'll just be like the old Big East. This isn't going to be good for the league. What happens if Mark Few retires? Is Gonzaga going to hire the right guy next? And all like legitimate concerns. I've just got a little more trust in Yormark that he kind of knows what he's doing with this thing. And that's how quickly he's built up trust to me. Now, maybe I'm being a fool. Maybe I'm being naive by trusting him on that point. But I think we're kind of in a new day and age. We're in a new era here in college athletics where being creative can really have some major advantages. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at on the Gonzaga front. Maybe about it, guys. Maybe about it here. The Pac-12 update. If you want one little last blurb, one little Pac-12 update here on the way out the door. And again, hit that $ below the chat box where it says say something if you want to get something in real quick at the gun before it is that I depart tonight. Dennis Dodd did say Pac-12 president included a regularly scheduled Monday meeting with no resolution in its ongoing media rights negotiations. Pac-12 needs that to be settled with before proceeding with anything else. The current media rights deal with Fox and ESPN expires in 2024. It's extremely late in the negotiating process to still be this far away from an agreement, given there is an expiring deal. Probably the biggest thing here is just this quote. So it's a quote from a Pac-12 AD through Dennis Dodd. It says, quote, I wouldn't say it's a concern. We're in a process. Panic or impatience isn't going to make a difference. I wouldn't say it's a concern. That to me feels a little bit like coping with a situation that probably is not the ideal scenario for anybody in the Pac-12, but you're also not going to publicly trash your commissioner here. And also it is true. I mean, panic is not going to help anything. You do have to exercise some patience there if you're the Pac-12, and they're the only ones that know what's actually being told to them behind closed doors and what's going on. We can just sit here and speculate, but the longer it goes, the more antsy people are going to get. And it does seem to be like the sentiment, even from the reporting from the Pac-12 side of things, is that there is a little bit of antsiness from some folks right now. Okay. Think that's going to do it for me here tonight. I should be dropping some content. I'm planning on here, just recording a little bit of content right after this to drop for you tomorrow to keep that train going. Think as you can see here, I've got my camera situation figured out. I will continue to try and tweak some things to make the streams better. hopefully get back on more of a regular schedule with the streams coming through here now, because we've continued to have enough news, certainly to be doing it. Big 12 basketball heating up here down the stretch. So it was good to be back tonight. Felt like the first normal, good live show that I've had here in a while. And I appreciate all of you guys' support being here. As always, I tell you, spread the word about this, whether it's through social media, Facebook groups of fans of your squad, fans of the league, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is that you use. Also, word of mouth. If you have Big 12 fan friends, you have people into conference realignment, college football, college hoops in general, let them know about this show and the channel, and let's continue to grow this awesome community. You can support me on Venmo. It's John-Kurtz-4. Always appreciate the support. Sincerely appreciate all of you guys who have helped support me here. Like the video. Make sure and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about your squad's schedule for the upcoming year. If you love what I have to say, you hate what I have to say, just let me know in the comments. It all does help me out. With that, I bid you adieu. It's going to do it for me here tonight. I will talk to you guys soon. Take care, and thank you for being here.